Good morning from the Subaru Canberra Rally of Canberra, the finale of the 2023 Bosch Motorsport Australia Rally Championship. We are standing on SS3, and that was Harry Bates and Coral Taylor who just passed us there to open the stage.
But let's just touch quickly on Lewis, who looked, I spoke to him at the end of the first one. He was struggling a little bit with that, just with confidence. I'd have to think, you know, when you've got the championship on the line and things like that, that does affect, I reckon, how you drive stage one. As much as they're relaxed and they've had a great calculated season, you know, that nervousness, it's a 24-kilometre stage. There's no split times in the car to know how you're going. You're literally taking every corner at a time. They'll now reset. I think that's why we saw everyone a lot closer in stage two. It's still 10K, still tricky, but you notice that everyone bridged the gap a bit. Harry jumped out to the lead. He was fourth quickest, only a second off the lead. Lucanir was in the mix, so we've now sort of got this sort of gaggle, and that could continue on for the rest of the day potentially.
Now, we actually went out into stage two. We were about 3/4 of the way through it. We saw the first kind of 4 or 6 cars go through. It was very interesting. We saw Harry come through, and he did not look committed. We could see with our own eyes, even in that very short section of the stage, that he did not look as committed, and then that showed in the times, because as Lewis then came through, Eddie came through, we thought, oh, they were on it. That's how it's done through that section of corners that we were at.
Well, let's have a look how Eddie Maguire tackles this one down the hill and see if he's on it.
As we head back into the cloud of dust that's coming our way.
Different sound. You can hear the difference of the Toyotas, who almost sort of seem to, you know, short pluck the gear, just a different sounding car. Wait until you hear Lucanir's car under brakes. That seems to have a lot of anti-lag compared to some of it. So he's been really quick. You know, clearly got a WRC2 car, the Ford brand, and we're just seeing that competitiveness come through in the ARC. And Luke's on it. He's going really, really well.
He wasn't happy after the first stage. He got out the car. How was that? Not good.
Yeah.
So obviously something clicked in the second stage, and hopefully we'll be seeing these stage 3 times hopefully come through. Well, when we've got some range. If you can see around us, we are well and truly in the middle of nowhere, which means that service is very hard to come by. So unfortunately, the results aren't coming through to us. But it will be very interesting to see whether he carried that momentum from the second stage into this third stage.
I think sometimes someone like Luke, who hasn't been to Canberra before, the feeling's foreign. It's not till you establish where you are with everybody else and how you went. So yes, definitely Harry jumped out, but there was then a gaggle of cars that were close together. So from that point of view, I think you might find it felt terrible. And the stages don't change in the way they feel, but you know, well, everyone's doing the same. So I just got to keep on that. Where can I refine and become slightly better? But like you said, you then get a better feel, like more confidence on where you're at. So
now it should be Alex Rullo coming through now in his Hyundai R5.
He's looking pretty committed, isn't he? See how he had just a couple of goes down there, more probably aggressive than Luke. So Luke had a smoother style. You sort of saw the nose dip and dive, and then I thought, oh, he's got on a little early, but then the car sort of cranked up. But he's got limited Australian Championship or rally experience, for that matter. It's been very impressive. He's been doing the West Australian State Championship to keep his form up, but he's showing some real commitment in this car. And like you said, we're third stage in a tricky rally, and he's so far going really well.
Yeah, I was just about to say, he's coming to the end of his first full season of the Australian Rally Championship. It's been really great to see him even take some stage wins this year. So it just shows what an adaptable driver he is, of course, coming from a circuit racing background, having driven in supercars for a couple of years, and transitioned that into a very different landscape. And, you know, you've driven both. You've driven circuit racing and predominantly rally, so you know very well the differences between those two styles of driving.
And in some ways, it's actually probably harder to transition from circuit to rally rather than go the other way around. You know, the car moving around when you come from rally, sort of, you know, you're used to that, so you can sort of adapt that a little bit to tarmac and try and tidy your skills up. So that's different for him, but he seems to have this natural aggression about him, the way he sort of approaches, and I think that suits this car. You know, you see his father, Peter, a little older, I guess, in age, but won Tigers and things before. So from that point of view, Peter's sort of taking a little bit longer to adapt to the car. He's young, enthusiastic, all that sort of stuff, but it shows by seating. You know, like we just said at the top of this sort of little segment was, where are they sitting? Yeah, he's seated now in like the top 4 or 5 in the Australian Championship at the moment. So it sort of shows there's some established players that he's now got a better seating.
he's started to be able to get through rallies without making mistakes. We saw in kind of the first half of the year there were little mistakes that kept creeping in, and that was really what hindered him from getting those solid results. So next year, if he comes back, which hopefully he will, should be fascinating.
No, absolutely. That's exactly going to be the case, as we do have coming down the hill here someone who's back into it, Richie Dalton. Of course, was third in last year's Australian Championship, Jess, and doing a bit of a one-off cameo appearance. He wasn't planning to do much rallying this year. Got involved in the New South Wales Championship. He's in the hunt for that, so he's sort of dual entities, doing part of the New South Wales State Championship, where he could be the title holder by the end of tomorrow, but also then has mixed it into the field. Because of his seeding from last year, he's in the mix there. But it's going to be difficult for him, even though he's going well in the New South Wales State Championship. He's not quite on probably where he'd like to be, where when you're doing all the rounds of the Australian Championship, and it's a one-off event for him. So.
Yeah, it's great to have him back, though. Such a character and a massive supporter of rallying in Australia. Of course, Shamrock College has been a big supporter of the ARC over the years, which is one of Richie's companies. So great to have him here, and also sporting that beautiful Craig Breen tribute livery as well. Yeah, the big, you sort of got that Irish flag on the front. And you're right, he supports particularly our junior drivers, our cup winners from last year, getting a drive in that car. So he sees that, he wants to try and advance the youth in the sport, and he's given the opportunity through his companies and his business, and also supports Taylor Gill. Taylor Gill went off to do, the World Championship, or trying to crack into the World Championship, and of course he's got some support on board to try and help Taylor where he can. Who's, of course, we should maybe see here soon. He's entered for this weekend, which is fantastic. He just flew in the country about 3 days ago. Really good to see Taylor back here after his exploits across the world, doing the European Championship, and hopefully that is the start of a fantastic international career, and having an Australian back in WRC consistently. He's done a fabulous job in that FIA Star Search driver, so like I said, we'll hopefully see him come through depending on the seating. A little bit more dust holding around. We'll have a look at the next car though. I caught up with Troy before the start of the first stage, and he was looking forward to these stages, but acknowledged just how tricky and technical they are. And he said, I'm trying to wake myself up at the moment, but a 25-kilometre stage to start the day is definitely going to do it. And it's really about consistency for him. I think so. I mean, you could even see there just a little more conservative. Yeah, probably the most dust. And now as he goes past us, the breeze has picked up and blown that away. And you'll have pockets of that, by the way, throughout the stages. The difficult bit is with the sun coming down, you sometimes get some glare off the windscreen. Most of the top-level cars will run a cover. You get the dashboard glare off your own road car. They'll run a sort of particular material or a flock-type covering on the dash, which sort of tries to stop that reflection. But that sort of can be off-putting and a little bit distracting. So, there will be pockets for drivers. But going back to Troy, I think just he's building confidence with that car. He actually had a slight suspension internal failure in Adelaide that they picked up post-event. So, he sort of felt like he was struggling with the car a little bit. And that's probably no doubt why, because it was an internal failure, which he was probably struggling to sort of explain to the team. You sort of feel this car's not quite doing what it needs to do. And they had one sort of damper out on the left rear or something. So he'll be now back to full form and probably playing it right here. There's still a great result to be had here, particularly overall, being endurance and getting to the end of tomorrow. We've already seen, like I said, the Luffs, the Gonzalez, that. So, some major players in the top 10 already out on stage one. It must be quite heartbreaking as a crew. Having issues early on, you're set for a big weekend of rallying, and having issues on the first stage, it must be awful. Oh, it's terrible, but then, it's motorsport and lots of people go through it. We'll have a quick look here. Molly Taylor looking very spectacular in the opening shot there. Fantastic to have Molly back in the Australian Rally Championship, of course. She came back for the Adelaide Hills Rally, our last round, and she's been fitting it in between her international exploits in Extreme. Doing a fabulous job, and really running it from their mad garage, her and Dan and things like that, sort of documenting that sort of process. Production car, very different. South Australia, we talked all the time about how high speed it is. Canberra's different here. I'll tell you what, though, did an amazing job in the opening stage, like fourth quickest, was in the mix. And then on the next one, we had Taylor
Taylor and her battling out. So as far as production went in that regard, there's only about 4 or 5 seconds between her and Taylor, both in Subarus. That's the battle pack to watch there a little bit. Implications for production for, of course, Steve Maguire and the Mitsubishi and Bodie Reading, who both had a disastrous start to the rally in itself.
Yes, I was going to touch upon that. Of course, the White Wolf Constructions Production Cup has been a fascinating battle this year. And then throw Molly in the mix at Adelaide and then add Taylor Gill to the mix here as well. It's, it could shake some things up. It
could do, because the short answer is because only 4 of the rounds count towards the Production Cup title. The rough calculation, the calculations are Steve Maguire must win, Bodie Reading needs to be 4th or worse. So they're both in it, need to win. Where does Taylor and Molly stack into the points table and bits and pieces? And the fact that Steve Maguire had a rollover in the shakedown, so the team been flat out repairing the car. Bodie's, of course, had that big accident in South Australia, has now got a Brendan Reeves Subaru. They did a head gasket only on Thursday. It now has an engine rebuild. They did it at Neil Bates' workshop, I believe. There were lots of people involved in that whole deal. The fact the car's even on the start line is ridiculous. So that storyline in the last month for Bodie's been crazy. So Production Cup is going to, whoever wins that is going to deserve it by Sunday night.
Who should be coming down the hill now?
Have a look, Taylor Gill himself. Let's have a look in the Subaru. This is the car he drove last year. Back in, it would be foreign for him to be driving this today. Jess, he was the Production Cup winner last year and, of course, drove this car spectacularly. The thing that no one will really know, even probably including himself, him and Daniel will work together on their notes and things, and they'll just come out of here and just go, wow, we've gone a whole nother level, to have them in this round. So.
That's an important point, actually, the fact that Taylor and Daniel have been able to stay as a partnership, because we saw how well they did last year in 2022 in the ARC as a combination and really grew together. And now seeing that they've been able to go overseas and still keep competing as a combination, they can bring that experience back here, and as you were saying, just show that commitment and that relationship, how good that is, because that is so important in rallying.
It is, particularly on these type of roads when that noting's so important. And also the fact that Daniel's made that commitment to go overseas and work with Taylor is hugely important, rather than Taylor just come back and bounce back with an old co-driver. That relationship is them both together here on this rally in this car. So sort of jumping in the old car, it'll feel completely different. He's been in a left-hand drive forward, completely different setup, and of course he's now jumped back in the old thing. A bit like an old glove, but right-hand drive, GD. But the times of getting out of the car already are pretty impressive. So.
I was going to say, is it a bit like putting on your favourite old pair of shoes and just slipping right into them?
Well, it seems like it so far. We'll no doubt talk to him at the service park. So.
He has been impressive, so hopefully he can keep that up.
Yep.
Now, thank you very much for joining us on SS3. Keep your eye on the ARC social channels throughout the day, and of course, you can keep an eye on the results at the Subaru Rally Results Hub, which is on rally.com.au.